Thank you so much, Paul, um, and to Amy and to Jenna. Great to be able to be together. Great to be able to worship together in our own homes with our cups of coffee. This is great. Uh, Hopefully Neville will talk long enough, which I'm sure he will, to give me time to drink this coffee while it's still hot. Um, yeah, so if you're joining us, wherever you're joining us from, whatever platform, whatever time of the day, it's a privilege to have the opportunity to come into your home or into your headphones or whoever you're listening. Um, yeah, so we're going to do things slightly differently this morning. So I know that we've done interviews before. Feels like a long time ago that we did interviews with Jesse and Nigel and others. We recorded them and played them on our Sunday mornings. This is live and it feels different. I had a moment of panic there. I was like, don't do anything, don't do live TV with children, animals, and I added on to that or Neville Garland. But we're going to try live TV with me and Neville here. Um, I think it's just to sort of set it up. I don't think this is just a one-off thing that we want to do. This has been something that we've talked about on and off for a couple of years, as me and Neville were reflecting on yesterday. And I suppose as we've just listened over the last number of weeks to different people and been in different conversations, we just thought that this would be a really helpful rhythm for us to establish. And so the idea is that after 3 weeks, we're going to take the fourth Sunday. So why not just start it now? Maybe for those of you who are a bit OCD, you're maybe thinking, why can we not do this at the end of the month? And so if you're one of those people, I'm just really sorry, but we've done 3 weeks, and so this is now our fourth Sunday. We don't like to do it too straightforward around here. So the idea is I am increasingly passionate that we are making sure that we are hearing one another and hearing ultimately what the Lord is saying to us through one another. I am really passionate that we feel like we are on this journey together. And so the thought of pausing, taking the fourth Sunday and stopping, pausing to make sure that we're all catching up, that we're all hearing from the Lord together. I do think it's really important. And so last week, David did a great job. Talk is cheap, really helpful. Actually, having David's notes on that as well. He's really good at doing that. And so one of the points that David made during the course of his chat with us last Sunday was that we create conversational space. And so I suppose as you listen to David saying that, you wanna make sure that you're doing that. No point in hearing David saying that, think it's a good idea, and then not create the conversational space that he is encouraging us to do. If we remember back 2 weeks ago, Amy, as she brought her talk to a close, talked about how we navigate this season well and how we navigate it fruitfully. And there's a few things that she gave us that we're praying, that we're being aware, that we're choosing our vocabulary right, and also that we are connected. She talked about being connected to Jesus, being connected to community, and being connected through conversation. And so again, I think it is really important that we do this, and I hope it is helpful for us. And I would love it that we get to the stage that on the fourth Sunday that there would be, in the build up to that Sunday, that there would be questions or there would be comments or there would be the freedom for somebody else just to jump on and let us know what they're hearing. Let us know what they're hearing from what we're sharing on a Sunday morning, and again, ultimately, what we're hearing from the Lord. Amy said that we are not meant to do this alone. We know that. I hope we know that we're not meant to do this alone. And as challenging as it is in this season, we're still not meant to do it alone. And so our connectivity through conversation is, I think these moments are going to be really important, because if we're going to journey, we'll have to journey together. And I hope these conversations will help us do that. I know maybe this feels like a long sort of build up, but again on Tuesday, me and Paul and Andrew had a conversation with Michael Briggs. And Michael is involved in church community stuff down in Dublin, leading the church down there. And he made this remark throughout the conversation with us. He said that the talks, they're really intentional within their church community, that the talks are not the answer. And sometimes I think that's what we've done. The preacher is the one that comes up on a Sunday morning for 30 minutes and gives all the answers. But the talks are not the answer. They are the start of a conversation. And so we are hoping that the last 3 weeks they've been really good talks, but they're not the answer. But they are the start of the conversation. So I'm really grateful for the last 3 weeks for Lila and for Amy and for David. Their talks have been wonderful. But I think I'm hoping that I can speak on their behalf, that I think they would want it to be the start of a conversation. I don't think that I didn't hear from either of them that they're coming with all the answers, but pleading with us to enter into a conversation. And so the thing about this is that talks are easier. Me and Neville talked about this yesterday. Stand that up and giving a 30-minute talk is a lot easier for me, and I think a lot easier for Neville. There's something about this that we're losing the sense of control. Uh, we are losing that ability to be in control for the next 30 minutes. And there's actually going to be more exposure to our vulnerabilities and to our weaknesses. And so I think we're okay with that. We're comfortable with that, aren't we, Nev?
Yeah, we are, but we have lost our control this morning, Neil, because both of our wives are heading to work and they've give us a time limit. So we are a wee bit under control, but no, it's really good to I suppose, as you said, this is something that we sort of chatted about a couple of years ago. This idea of being able to talk out what God is doing, or in our lives before we pass that moment or go on to the next thing. I suppose lockdown has caused many things for us in our home. Um, I liked Lila's chat on being known. It's caused us to pause and yes, allow us to settle with that fact that we're known. Every part of us is known by God. And so for me, as I thought over that chat, um, I, I was kind of released into a new area of, it's okay that sometimes things aren't okay. Sometimes it's okay that we haven't got all our stuff together. As I've talked before, that Psalms are hugely important. I spend a lot of my time in Psalms, and most of these are written by a guy called David, who a lot of the time doesn't have it all together, and yet he's classed as a man that's after God's heart. And I'm saying that in the sense of, um, I've come to understand through Amelia, actually, that my style of learning is is um, is actually conversation. So Amelia is missing, her class. Um, uh, I can't call them colleagues because they're not not, but they're her classmates,
Classmates.
and working out stuff around the table is is hugely important uh, to me, and I've seen that in pausing and actually getting to know the people I live with. Uh, um, uh, and I know there's so much more, Lila, that Lila put into that. And I'm speaking to Lila here because she's on the screen with us. She's on Zoom with us, um, but it's just that idea of being known and then moving on from there. But it takes time. It takes time for that to happen, doesn't it? So
Yeah, so just while you're reflecting on that, what I find really helpful, lots of stuff I found really helpful from what Lila shared, but I suppose just the last few days I've been reflecting on that line of He knows, like Jesus knows to sit with what you're sitting with. And there's times I find that really important, because I think there is times like, and even though you've been following Jesus and feel like given your life to get to know him better, there's still moments where you think, like, does he even get this? Does he even understand this frustration? And I found it really helpful. In times it feels really simple, but just that reminder that he knows what it is. He knows what it is to sit with what you're sitting with.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't help but think of Lila a few times whenever in our conversation with Michael on the podcast that we did on Tuesday night, and Michael I found it really helpful that he was using language that I found quite similar to what Lila was sharing with us. He said that God is not calling us to escapism, but rather to find resilience in the midst of the trial. And I think that we're often very guilty, and Lila did a great job of reminding us of that. We're so guilty of giving people the verse, giving people the
Yeah.
thing that we think will fix them really quickly because they need to get out of this, they need to overcome, they need to be removed from these feelings and from this situation. But God's not calling us to escapism, but rather to find resilience in the midst of the trial. And so I found that important, married with the fact that He knows what it is to sit. He knows to sit with what it is we're sitting with, and actually sits there with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not to skip away from Lila, but then David brought out that fact of, how often we use words ourselves that are not really true representations of where we're at ourselves. And I understand the importance of scripture and hope and not wallowing in a sense. But oftentimes we use words that we don't even. How often do we use words that we don't actually have allowed? We've taken the time to allow to become part of our being, um, because we just live behind so many cliches, and so we enter into conversations oftentimes as these superheroes, which we're actually not we're not even superheroes of our own lives, and we try to be superheroes of others, and we listen to a conversation, or we don't actually listen to a conversation, and that's a whole different train of thought, because I lived before the time there was text messaging and WhatsApp and even email. And I have learned that those things are ways of communicating what I want to communicate to you. They're not ways of me listening to what you have to say in response to those. And so I think that just that whole being known, and again, just to pull back into that is, once we, I think, understand who knows us, and that He knows us in every area of our own lives, then we allow people to journey that themselves too. And we don't pull them out of it and say, you know what, you shouldn't be journeying that. You should be more triumphalist in this moment because Scripture says X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Yes, Scripture says that, but Scripture is there to help us on our journey to meet Christ, to be with Christ.
Yeah. So I wonder, Nev, again, there's probably people that can speak about this better than you and me can, but I wonder, again, how much of that idea of whenever we're listening to people, like I'm guilty of this. I don't know if that's exactly what you were saying, but I'm guilty of listening to people, but the whole time I'm listening in order to respond.
Yes.
Like, that's how I'm listening.
Mm-hmm.
And
I only
and I
responded
wonder,
quickly.
so just
Sorry,
because
Neil.
we've
I only responded quickly to that because I knew that's what you were going to say. So anyway.
But even we talked about it, this idea of losing control. I think that is, we're almost afraid not to give an answer because that's almost giving up control, is it?
Oh yes.
Like we want to be in control, so we feel like we have to give an answer. We have to give some sort of like response or verse because then we can keep control of the situation. We don't like to be out of control. We don't like the mystery or the uncertainty or the doubt, and so we keep control of that by giving all the right answers and saying all the right things. And like you've, I suppose, alluded to, sometimes I don't even know whether we fully believe it ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and again, then David alluded to that, about a word in season. There is a place for that, and And so there's an importance in that, of entering into someone's story and journeying. Don't, don't give that person advice unless you're going to actually journey with them through the whole part of that. So, like, there's so much, in those two. Particularly, a couple of weeks beforehand, you talked about the idea of us being a slave to instant, and we also use this word, and Lila brought it out too, about being rooted. I think she referred to use that, and so that's brought me on a whole different line. Well, not a different. I think it's all the same line of, because we haven't talked about Amy yet and what she shared, and and this whole idea of productivity and fruitfulness, and I've just been so challenged by that. I suppose, you see, lockdown is difficult for me because I enjoy productivity. I enjoy routine. I like to know what I'm doing, and I like things to run normal. And we were on a Zoom call the other night with other church leaders, and a couple of people within my group, as we did breakout rooms, they enjoy chaos because they just love the fact of seeing what God's going to do next in the middle of the chaos. And I'm like falling off my chair thinking, what on earth? What way is these guys wired? And then I'm like, I probably need to have a bigger conversation with those guys and see, what am I missing here? What am I? And the thing that Ronnie brought up the other night on our men's was, I enjoy looking forward to things, and I think a big thing at the moment for us all is, one of the things that we all probably have got in the habit of doing at this time of year is planning your holidays, and there's even an uncertainty about that. Is that going to happen this year? And I say that in the light of, that's a mild kind of a thing, but it does affect us in a way. There's people who have greater difficulties than this, and journey far better than me in these times, and I just honor those people, and just think, what, the depth of faith and how deep they must be rooted in God, to hold that that just to hold that journey. So look, that
Yeah,
could
but
lead into a whole lot of
yeah.
stuff,
Before
couldn't it?
you, so now we're doing a bit of summarising in some ways, and some of the things that have jumped out at us from some of the talks. You've brought up Amy's, and suppose I'd love to ask you a question, maybe to try to make it a bit more personal, get you
Go on.
comfort zone a bit more. So, it's that idea, it's that question almost that Amy started with, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. Like, where are you getting your energy from? So hearing you saying, Neville, that you're used to productivity,
Mm-hmm.
and whenever you're feeling that maybe you're not as productive as you normally are, because
Yeah.
that energizes you, doesn't it? Like,
Does
being
you?
productive energizes you.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's the question I'd love, yeah, maybe to reflect on, if you can. That where are you then getting your energy from?
Yeah. So then I have had to, what I've done over the last couple of weeks is listen again to, sorry about this, David, but you are a friend, but I haven't listened to yours twice. But I've listened to Lila's talk a couple of times. I've listened to Amy, and I've tried to say, look, you know, this is probably a time of change. And God, this is a time of, I don't know, I honestly have no idea what God's up to, where the world's concerned. And I would not even take a hazard to guess that. And I think it takes a very wise person to, well, I don't even know whether wise is the right word to guess that. But I know there's some readjustments going on in here. That's what I do know. Um, I know um, that I want to change. I just feel I've got to a place where I want to change that. I want to. I don't want my identity or my drive in life to always be about productivity. I
Good.
want it to be something greater. And so Amy talked about this idea of fruitfulness, and I've been hugely attracted to, at the moment, John 15. And you love that, Neil, because this is your baby. This is your chapter in the Bible. But there's a verse that it
15,
says,
16, and 17, I would have to say that. Now, don't be.
yeah, well, we've all got a springboard somewhere. And
Spring, I like that.
verse 5 says, Jesus speaking of himself, he says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If any man remains in me and I in him, you will bear much fruit. So, it's just brought me back to that place. Do I think the great telltale story of our lives when when our time's done will be fruitfulness. Now, but I think we have to be careful how you quantify fruitfulness.
Mm-hmm.
But fruitfulness comes from abiding,
Mm-hmm.
and there is one place that we are called to abide, and that's we're called to abide in Him. And I honestly have a lot to learn where that's concerned, because I think in our lives, and I'll speak for myself, is we're bombing along, and one day we meet Jesus, and we say, "Yeah, that's good. That's first of all, we probably attracted to Him because it's our ticket when we get out of here, and then we realize actually He might actually help us on the journey here." But I think very few people preach on the fact that there is a death to take place. And the death is within us. We have to die to our way and come alive to His way. And so I'm a farmer's boy, and I'll always have some sort of farming analogy of some sort. But it's clear, it says that unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, Scripture's clear on that, it will never produce a harvest, or then it does produce a great harvest. And I suppose that's what we want. We want our lives to be fruitful. There's so much more. Like I have found that over the last year, if we want to even go back longer than that, I have found that COVID has been quite a humbling experience for me. Because I think you steam along, you bomb along, you're planning the next thing, you're listening, you're going to the next event, and life is just this continuous circuit of hopping from the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. One of the things that has helped me to get, as I've already said, helped me to get to know the people I live with. That's been huge. Your good points and what's your highs and your lows of COVID. I think they're so closely linked. You know, Homeschooling is definitely a low, but there's a huge high in it because you can see how your kids function. And I haven't done a lot of that, so I shouldn't really speak a lot out of that. But I know that we have spent more time as a family together, and we have, been able. I have been able to take more time to listen to my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to take more time and see the depth that's in my wife's heart over this time, and that's huge. That's massive. She's a carer through and through, and that's what God called her to be, and that's where she functions and operates the best. But yeah, it's a time of humbling, and I can't help but think of a story that I heard during the week about apple trees, and Amy was so good in her talk. She talked a little bit about the apple trees, didn't she? And my dad and mum were given a gift of apple trees a couple of years ago, and they planted them. And my dad said to me the week before last, he said, "You know anything about apple trees?" And I said, "No, I don't actually." And he said, "Well, you live where all the apple farmers are. Maybe you'd be talking to someone someday." He forgot that I'm not my brother. My brother would talk to a cow that walked down the road. I'm not that forward. Alan would talk,
Really?
but so it made me think, and I heard a great story during the week. But anyway, basically, my dad was telling me that the trees are doing really well, and they are doing really well. They flower really well. They're growing tall, but when they produce fruit, the fruit is extremely small. And he said there must be something we need to do. And the long and short of it is, these trees need to be trained. And as Philip Emerson, it was Philip Emerson told this story during the week. He said an apple tree or a tree that bears fruit needs to be trained to bow low. Because if it grows up tall, it loses all its energy because it's just attracted to the light. But once a tree is trained to bow low, it will produce better fruit. And
Very good.
and I can see that in my mum and dad's trees. They are growing, they're flying up, but they need to be trained to bow. And Amy brought this out, and she said, I've notes somewhere, but I can't remember where they are. I've got like 10 pages all out across the desk here. But Amy was saying, there's sometimes beauty or beautiful things that happen in the winter seasons of our lives. And one of the things that farmers do, or apple farmers do, is they spend some time training their trees and getting them ready for spring, summer, and the harvest that is to come. And so I think that in this time that I've been probably brought a wee bit lower, I think how I treat others has changed. How I listen to others is I think I've learned to listen to others a little bit better. Um, and I've enjoyed that the fact that we, came into the new year with that idea that we wanted to create space for different people to speak, and just to have a wider narrative than than we just listen to all the time.
Yeah.
So that was a wee bit of a ramble, but
So you're finding energy from buying low.
yeah. Although it's not always easy. It's not always
No.
easy. So it isn't. Not always easy.
Yeah.
Ronnie, you quoted. So I'm just speaking because Ronnie's on here with us as well. Ronnie, as it's Valentine's Day and we're all showing the love. Ronnie quoted this morning, um, Corinthians 13, and yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Also, was in those verses it says that love doesn't give up easy. And I was thinking about, as Amy had talked about, endurance and perseverance in different seasons. As I say, I'm a farmer's son, so I kind of understand that life has many different seasons, and and love doesn't give up easy. And I think that we have to put our roots down, or I have to put my roots down a wee bit more and be a wee bit more resilient um, just in this time.
Yeah.
Because his love for me doesn't give up.
Yeah.
Um, anyway.
I'm hoping your nice soppy comments about your wife will give us an extra few minutes here.
Oh, right. Yeah, what time is it?
Love it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
But just when you're thinking it, I mean, not ask you directly, but because you've already started to hint at it, how we define fruitfulness in this season. And again, as I'm listening to you, I'm hearing you answering it, and I'm hearing Amy answer it a wee bit last week. Because I think we often do what Amy said. We think productivity equals fruitfulness. We think
Mm,
productivity and fruitfulness are the same things. And I think it was important that you said productivity is not a bad thing. Like, it's not a bad thing, but it's not the same as fruitfulness. And I think this is a season where fruitfulness actually does look like what you've alluded to, Nev: patience, endurance.
mm,
In this season looks like listening better, being kinder, self-control, gentleness. That's
mm,
fruitfulness looks like, I think, in this season. And I think that's a really important lesson for us to learn. Because I think we can be so guilty of elevating the gifts of the Spirit above the fruit of the Spirit. And maybe that's an unfair comparison, but I think that we so elevate the gifts and we so put them on a platform, but actually it's fruit has to come first.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
this is a season where that's how we're going to define fruitfulness is going to be love, joy, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness.
so I have this piece of paper that sits at, I take it with me to work, and it just sits beside me, and that's what's on it is Galatians 5, 22 and 23,
Mhm.
because it's the question, like, how am I, how is this fruit evolving? Is it,
Mhm.
and I suppose, it's not something that I want to walk out through the door and I just want to slap a sticker on my head and go, I'm doing endurance today. Like, is that something that's, I see a sense in when a difficult phone call comes, when a difficult email comes, or when you're having a bad day, is that a fruit that's, saying, rising up and saying, look, it's okay. It's okay. You can carry this a wee bit longer than you think you can,
Yeah.
or carry it a bit
That idea,
better.
I don't know if you have any examples to this. I know this is the problem, I suppose, with doing conversational style. Your notes end up all over the place because you're not going in any order. But
Hmm.
I do wonder if there is examples of how we have sacrificed fruitful things for the sake of being productive. And it maybe seems like a silly example, and maybe not everybody can relate because they're not homeschooling, but it's just the first thing in mind. Because I think being productive means we want to get it done as quickly as possible. And we miss, like, we end up getting it through. We end up actually I end up sometimes telling Jada the answer just to get it done quicker.
Ah,
Fruit to that. Who wins out of that? And I am so aware there's times where I think I do it. I think, and because you've talked about conversation as well, I think I do that in conversation too, because I want the conversation to come to like a productive ending. That you sacrifice the fruit of it. You sacrifice fruitful things for the sake of being productive. And I don't know if there's other examples that you have, or I'm sure those like guys that are listening. There's maybe some things. I think that is one of those things that I think is worth us reflecting on. What
mhm.
what are we sacrificing? What fruitful things are we sacrificing for the sake of being productive?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And the difficulty is there's so many. I think we just push along every day and get the next thing past us, and until we get to 8:30 and get the kids to bed and get Netflix on, and
Yeah,
then it's my time. Uh,
yeah,
and that's kind of the way it goes.
yeah,
And we just miss that deeper work. Again, I think, and I just don't want to brag about myself, but I will.
do that.
I'm a farmer's son, and Ronnie, he worked on a wee bit of farming as well, picking potatoes when he grew up, and it's just that work that work that's done under the soil. There's a work that's done undercover
Mm,
that we need to push into. We need to push into first of all, and then we need to to recognize, if we can't see something happening on the surface,
yeah,
and just aim for that deeper stuff, than just the next. Let's just get the
yeah.
answer to the question.
And I think again to go back to what Lila talked about, I think we do the opposite sometimes. What Lila was encouraging us to do, we want to fix people really quickly so we can move on to the next task or we can move
Yeah,
on to the next person.
yeah.
And I think it's so harmful.
There's two lines that David said, which I think, is really good. By the way, I don't like Zoom. I just want to put it out there. I want to put that out as far and as wide as possible. I do not like Zoom, but I think it's brought us to a place of huge intentionality with one another. So on our men's group, I know we can have really good chats together now on Zoom, and we just don't get deflected off with the next thing. I think
Mm.
we miss the physical contact and so some of the other things. But just one of the lines that David said was from Dallas Willard. There's nothing sudden
Mm.
about Christ likeness
Yeah.
or becoming like Christ. There's not. It's not. I love shortcuts, and I know others on here love shortcuts too. There's no shortcut in that. Every one of our emotions will be challenged as we
Mm-hmm.
go on that journey.
Yeah.
And there'll be days where you will be bombing on, and there'll be days where you'll find it a wee bit difficult. And then the other line that David said somewhere in my notes were about is uh, yeah, he said about our words tell about how a lot about how we view God and how we view others. But then he just talked about that idea of like what kind of people are we like to be around,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
and that comes from our rootedness, our abiding, our you know being aware. Um, so Lila, how do we connect? David, how do we communicate? And then Amy was, how do I live?
Yeah.
And I suppose those geeks that are online, I love geeks, by the way. Um, and those geeks, I push it back into what's your operating system? Are you operating on an old system that is flying with its tongue out, or are you operating on one of these new modern systems? And I suppose just I'll end with that. The new way I want to operate, or the new system I want to operate under, is love. And so I'm rereading the Bible again, hopefully with the lens all the time of love. He
Yeah.
loves us,
Yeah.
and he gave his life for us.
Yeah.
So
Um, just another quick thought. I don't know if you want to respond to this. Um, I think it was from a conversation that we maybe had during the week, as I've reflected on some, like, what would be some habits for fruitfulness. I can't remember where we had the conversation, but the idea of how we start our day
hmm,
is probably more important than I think we realize. So, what is the first thing that you're filling your mind with? Is
yeah,
it um, like, is it Facebook, or is it the news, or what is it?
yeah,
Maybe we think it's just another dig at social media. It's not. It's just a conversation about how, like, reflect on your days this week. How you started your day actually really does seem to dictate your mood, your outlook, and even at times the course of your day.
definitely.
And so I'm just wondering, uh, is there habits, is there rhythms that we could establish that at least we're just starting our day differently? I read a small book by Frank Loback a number of years ago, with a missionary to the Philippines, and he said, "I determined not to get out of bed until that mindset upon the Lord has been settled." And it was simple practice. I think we sometimes put these guys in a pedestal, thinking that we can't do the things that they did. All he did for the first literally 3 or 4 minutes of the day was to settle himself long enough to acknowledge the presence of the Lord, to acknowledge that He's kind and that He's good and that He's with him.
Hmm.
His posture, the Father's posture towards him, was going to be love, and that he said that changed his mood, it changed his outlook, it dictated the course of his day when he started like that.
So when I was young, I used to go to stay with my auntie and uncle who were much older. They were of an older generation, and we would sometimes sneak across. They weren't the type of people. They were kind of must have been related to the Dawsons, because they didn't get up too early in the morning, They had a shop, and they opened their shop at 9:30 in the morning. And some mornings we would get up early because that was the type of Alan and I, and still is, and that's just the way we are. And we would sneak across the lantern and looking through their door, and oftentimes you would see them kneeling at the side of their bed, which, like, I was just sharing that story with Amelia last night about Granddad. My dad, every day he finishes his day kneeling at the side of his bed. But I think there's something important about how we start our day.
Mhm.
And so what I find is tend to stay away from news in the morning. I'm driving to work. I've got BBC Ulster on. I suppose we get up. The first thing we do is probably it's a habit. We look at social media. I'm not into football. I'm not into Instagram or Twitter. I just flick on Facebook. So a healthy habit that we've started in our house, and probably some other people can find maybe a better one. But 7:30, Philip Emerson's on with his devotional, and he's actually going through the book of John at the moment. And so as we're getting ready, that's playing in the background for us. And then I just stay away from news as long as possible. I'm thinking of what you said about that missionary. Until it's settled, I'd probably be in bed till about 12 o'clock if I was to wait in bed till everything was settled within me. But it's funny how those little things, just those little things, make a huge difference in your day.
Yeah.
Reading scripture is important.
Yeah.
Just reading a psalm, allowing it to speak to you, allowing it to become part of your being. Maybe you not even get something out of it that day, but you know what? It's banked in there for the day that you do need it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that idea is doesn't matter whether you get up at your early time or
No, no,
your
no.
your accusation that Dawson's get up later.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter what time you get up at.
no. It doesn't make me any better because I get up early in the morning. That doesn't. But it's how you hinge that day
Yeah.
is hugely important.
Yeah.
And it only takes a small thing to make a big difference.
Yeah.
Mustard seed, guys.
I'm gonna close out with a final
Yeah.
thought here now,
Yes,
and
mate.
then if you could pray for us.
Yeah.
And I'm attempt, I say this tentatively because I don't want people listening in to say stuff just to make us feel better. Like most people that know me know that words of affirmation, I like to please people, and words of affirmation are really important. But I would love us that I would love that if this is helpful, let us know whether we've done a good job or not this morning or not. Forget that. But whether this idea is helpful of like pausing every 3 weeks just to stop and hear if we're hearing one another and with all of us are catching up with what we feel the Lord's saying to us and to one another. I think that would be really important. And so because I suppose because we've touched on John 15, because it's Valentine's Day, whip de do. And then a wee bit of what I would love to talk about next Sunday is found in John 15, verse 12. And I finish with a simple thought that John 15, in fact, Jesus has already said in John 13, there's a new command that I give to you. And so this is what we'll probably touch on, we'll probably elaborate on a wee bit more next Sunday. This was not something that was added on to the old. This was new. This replaced what Jesus was saying here, replaced the old. We talked about it in our midweek. It had become obsolete. The old has gone. The old covenant has become obsolete. The new command, it's not an added on, it's a replacement. And what is it? What is this new command that he gives? Love as I have loved you. And because you've touched on it now, I just wanted to bring it up because the way of love replaces the way of law. It's not,
Right.
it replaces it. The way of love replaces the way of law. And so it was already big news when Jesus brought out the golden rule. The law and the prophets, Jesus said further back that they are if you want to put all of the law and the prophets together, and this is what is the most important: love the Lord your God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. In other words, love in the way that you would want to be loved. And now, before Jesus goes to the cross, I think there's some people refer to it as the platinum rule, because now Jesus is going even further. He says, not only love as you would want to be loved, but love as I have loved you. And then that's whenever like 1 Corinthians 13 is a nice verse to read at weddings and stuff like that. But this is truly what it is to be what you've talked about, Nev. Grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies. Like, this is the only way that we live this type of love that Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 13. And the way that he has learnt it is through the words of Jesus, who said, love as I have loved you. And so that's John 15, and that's why I love it. I'm so challenged by it. So continue to engage with us around this. Now, why don't you close your time in prayer? And thanks for your honesty and your vulnerability, and being willing to do this with me this morning. Bless you.
Thanks, Neil. Verse 9, in that same chapter, Jesus says this: as the Father has loved me, so I love you. I think that's huge, and I'm reading these verses out as prayers over us. I've been struck by Psalm 81, verse 10. It says, open wide your mouth and I will fill it. And I just think there's a posture there where we just need to sit before him. And then Amelia and I were reading, or Amelia brought it to my attention last night about Psalm 1. She was talking about the person who delights in the law of the Lord, and he meditates on it day and night. And I'm looking forward to what Neil is going to share with us next week. That law that is referred to in Psalm 1 is now replaced by what Neil is going to talk about. That is Jesus himself, that we would meditate on him day and night, and we would be like trees planted by streams of water, which will yield great fruit in the proper season. So, Father, I pray that you would help us on this journey to become more like Christ and to know you better. And Father, I do really thank you for one another, the ability to work this out or to chat this out together. And and bless our people. Bless all who listen, and help us just to, as David would encourage us many, many times, just put in small steps, small practical steps that will help us to grow and to be more, live more like people of Galatians 5. Amen. Thank you.
When I was your fault, still your love fought for me. You have been so